The first thing that hit me wasn't the betrayal, it was the headache. A sharp blinding spike of agony split my skull the moment I pushed open the heavy oak door of Suite 402 at the plaza. I had come looking for my husband, Julian Pierce, the golden boy of Wall Street, who told me he was stuck in a late-night board meeting. Instead, the rhythmic creaking of the king-sized bed and the unmistakable sounds of intimacy filled the luxurious room. Through the dimly lit entryway, I saw them. Julian, his hands trailing down the back of the person underneath him, and the person gasping his name, Caleb, Julian adopted brother. In the original script of my life, this was the moment my heart was supposed to shatter into a million jagged pieces. I was supposed to drop the designer bag I was holding, scream cry, and clutch my swollen 8-month pregnant belly in agony. I was supposed to be the tragic victim. But as the headache flared, reaching a crescendo, something snapped. Memories that didn't belong to me, or rather memories of the reality of this world, flooded my brain. Like a downloaded file forcefully unpacked, I suddenly understood everything. This wasn't just a bad marriage. This was a novel, a cheap, dramatic, tear-jerking novel. And I, Asher Cole, was nothing but cannon fodder, a pathetic stepping stone character destined to lose his dignity, his company, and eventually his life, all to pave the way for the epic forbidden romance between Julian and his precious Caleb. The headache vanished, leaving behind a cold, absolute clarity. Crybeg fight for a man who belongs in the trash, I thought, staring at the tangled limbs on the bed. Not in this lifetime. I didn't make a sound. I didn't drop my bag. Instead, with a practiced calmness I didn't know I possessed, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone. I switched the camera to 4K resolution 60 frames per second. The lighting in the suite was a bit moody, but the focus was crystal clear. "Julian, you promised me forever," Caleb whimpered softly, his voice trembling with practiced vulnerability. "I only love you," Caleb Julian groaned back. "I only married Asher for the public image and his shares in Horizon. He is an idiot. He doesn't even know the child he is carrying isn't mine." I hit the stop button, a full 2 minutes of high-definition betrayal complete with an audio confession. It was a masterpiece. "An idiot," I smirked, rubbing the subtle curve of my belly. "We will see who the idiot is." I tapped my screen a few times, forwarding the video file to my secure cloud server. Then I stepped fully into the room, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Excuse me," I said. My voice was loud, bright, and utterly devoid of sorrow. The reaction was instantaneous. Julian froze, his face draining of blood. Caleb let out a muffled shriek, scrambling to pull the velvet duvet over his bare shoulders. Julian scrambled off the bed, stumbling over his discarded trousers. "It is not what it looks like. I can explain." "Save the monologue, Julian." "It is bad for my prenatal education," I interrupted, raising a hand. I pulled a sleek leather folder from my bag and tossed it onto the glass coffee table. It landed with a satisfying slap. "Those are divorce papers. My lawyer drafted them weeks ago, just in case. Now let us talk terms." Julian stared at me, dumbfounded. Where was the weeping husband? Where was the hysteria? "You just confessed on 4K video that you orchestrated a fake marriage to steal my shares." I said, my tone as casual as if I were ordering a latte. "If this leaks, Apex Holdings stock will plummet before the opening bell. The SEC will be breathing down your neck, and the board will crucify you. So here is the deal. I want 40% of your liquid assets, sole ownership of the Manhattan penthouse, and you will buy out my Horizon shares at triple the market value, in cash, tomorrow." "Are you insane?" Julian hissed, panic warring with anger. "No, I am just pregnant and very, very tired." I smiled, a cold, empty smile. "You have 24 hours, Julian. Buy my silence, and you can have your tragic romance in peace. Refuse and I destroy your empire by breakfast." Without waiting for his answer, I turned on my heel and walked out of the suite. The moment the heavy doors closed behind me, a massive wave of relief washed over me. I was free. No more playing the devoted blind spouse. I was going to take the money, lock myself in my penthouse, and become the ultimate salted fish. I would sleep in until noon, eat caviar in my pajamas, and raise my baby in peace. Let the main characters tear each other apart. I was officially on strike. Humming a soft tune, I made my way down the opulent corridor of the plaza, adjusting the collar of my coat against the chill of the evening. I was so busy calculating my impending retirement fund that I didn't watch where I was going. As I turned the corner toward the elevators, I slammed hard into a solid wall of muscle draped in bespoke Italian wool. "Careful," a low, resonant voice rumbled above me. Two strong hands grasped my shoulders, steadying me before I could lose my balance. The grip was firm, almost possessive. I looked up, ready to snap a quick apology, but the words died in my throat. Standing in front of me was Alexander Vance, CEO of Nightfall Capital, the undisputed demon of Wall Street. And according to the memories, I had just unlocked the ultimate villain of this world. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair swept back and eyes the color of a violent storm. But it wasn't his intimidating reputation that made my breath catch. It was the way he was looking at me, his storm gray eyes, narrowed pupils dilating as he inhaled deeply. He froze, his gaze dropping to the curve of my stomach, then snapping back up to my face. A terrifying, predatory recognition flashed in his eyes. 9 months ago, in a haze of drugged confusion, I had stumbled into the wrong hotel room. I had never seen the face of the man who took me that night. But looking at Alexander Vance right now, feeling the overwhelming, suffocating weight of his alpha presence, I knew. He recognized the scent. Mr. Cole Alexander said, his voice dropping an octave, slipping over my name like a dark promise. "My apologies," I blurted out, tearing myself from his grip. My heart hammered wildly against my ribs. I practically sprinted into the waiting elevator, smashing the lobby button until the doors closed, severing his intense stare. By the time I reached my penthouse an hour later, I had ordered a massive pepperoni pizza and locked every deadbolt on the door. I collapsed onto the velvet sofa, kicking off my shoes and letting out a long, contented sigh. "We did it, little one," I whispered to my belly, rubbing it gently. "We are rich, we are free, and we are going to sleep for a week." I bit into a slice of pizza, utterly convinced that my days of drama were over. I had outsmarted the plot. I was safe. I had absolutely no idea that the most dangerous predator in New York had just found his prey, and my peaceful retirement was about to go up in flames. I had exactly 14 hours of uninterrupted, glorious peace. 14 hours of lounging in my silk pajamas, eating leftover pepperoni pizza cold straight from the fridge, and binge-watching reality TV on a velvet sofa that cost more than most people's cars. My phone was buried under a pile of cashmere throw blankets, firmly set to Do Not Disturb. Julian frantic attempts to reach me, the inevitable fallout at Apex Holdings. None of it mattered. I was a salted fish now. My only job was to breathe, incubate this child, and bask in the glow of my freshly acquired divorce settlement. Then the private elevator chimed. I didn't even open my eyes. Only 2 people had the bypass code to my penthouse elevator, me and the building head of security, who knew better than to interrupt my hibernation. Heavy, deliberate footsteps echoed across the Italian marble floor of my foyer. They didn't sound like security. They sounded like an executioner. "Mr. Cole," a voice resonated through the spacious living room. It was deep, commanding, and chilled the air by a good 10 degrees. I groaned, pulling a cashmere blanket over my head. "If you are here to sell me life insurance, I am already dead. Come back in the next life." The blanket was abruptly ripped from my grasp. I blinked against the afternoon sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Standing over me, blocking out the sun like a beautifully tailored eclipse, was Alexander Vance. He was dressed in a dark, impeccably cut 3-piece suit that screamed Wall Street royalty. His storm gray eyes swept over my disheveled hair, my wrinkled pajamas, and finally the half-eaten pizza slice resting precariously near my 8-month pregnant belly. His left eyebrow twitched in a microscopic show of disbelief. "How did you even get in here?" I muttered, sitting up slowly and rubbing my temples. Alexander didn't answer. Instead, he dropped a thick beige manila folder onto the glass coffee table. Next to it, he placed a sleek silver USB drive. "I do not like wasting time," Asher Alexander said, taking a seat in the armchair opposite me. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his gaze pinning me to the sofa. "The USB contains the security footage from the 10th floor of the St. Regis, exactly 9 months ago. The folder contains a court-admissible DNA test. We both know what happened that night, and we both know whose child you are currently carrying." My heart did a traitorous little flip, but I forced my face to remain completely blank. I looked at the folder, then at the USB, and finally at him. "Congratulations," I said, flatly grabbing my cold pizza slice. "You're going to be a father. Feel free to send a check on his birthdays. Now, if you will excuse me, it is my nap time." Alexander's jaw tightened. Clearly, the demon of Wall Street was not used to being dismissed. This is not a joke. I came here with a proposition. Julian Pierce has been a thorn in my side for 2 years. He is incompetent, arrogant, and playing with money that is not his. I want to crush Apex Holdings entirely, and you, as his former husband and Horizon primary shareholder, are going to help me do it. I took a slow bite of my pizza, chewing deliberately. No. Alexander froze. Excuse me? No, I repeated, swallowing. I just extracted myself from that dumpster fire of a marriage. I have enough money to buy a small island. I am officially retiring. I have zero interest in your corporate bloodbaths, Mr. Vance. Find another pawn. The temperature in the room dropped again. Alexander stood up, his towering frame casting a long shadow over me. The alpha pheromones rolling off him were suffocating, thick with dominance and quiet rage. You misunderstand your position, he said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. You are carrying a Vance heir. If you refuse to cooperate, I will file for full custody the moment the child takes its first breath. I have the wealth, the lawyers, and the leverage to ensure you never see him. You will walk into Nightfall Capital tomorrow morning and you will hand over Apex internal strategy, or I will take everything from you. In the original novel, this was the kind of threat that made people throw themselves off bridges. Alexander Vance was a man who could erase your existence with a phone call. I looked up at his terrifying, beautiful face, and then I let out a long, exhausted sigh. Fighting him would require energy. Hiring lawyers would require energy. Running away would definitely require energy. As a professional, salted fish energy was my most precious commodity. Fine, I grumbled, sinking deeper into the cushions. I will help you destroy Julian, but I have conditions. Alexander crossed his arms, looking slightly thrown off by my rapid capitulation. Name them. First, I held up a finger. I require a Michelin star chef at the office. I am eating for 2, and I refuse to consume corporate cafeteria garbage. 3 hot meals a day, plus snacks. Alexander stared at me. Done. Second, I raised another finger. My back hurts and my feet are swollen. If I am sitting in your office drafting strategies, you will provide a massage therapist. Or better yet, you can massage my legs yourself. You are the reason I am carrying this heavy bowling ball anyway. His storm gray eyes widened a fraction. I am the CEO of Nightfall Capital. I do not rub feet. Then I guess I will see you in custody court, I yawned, waving a hand dismissively. A muscle feathered in his jaw. Fine. What else? Third, when we have lunch, if there is shrimp, you will peel it for me. I hate getting my hands dirty. And fourth, I require a mandatory 2-hour nap at 1 in the afternoon every day. If you or anyone in your terrifying glass tower wakes me up, the alliance is off. Silence stretched between us. Alexander looked at me as if I were an alien species he had never encountered. He came here expecting a desperate weeping victim or a cunning corporate rival. Instead, he got a lazy pregnant extortionist demanding seafood peeling services. Slowly, the corner of his mouth twitched upward. It was not quite a smile, but it was close enough to be dangerous. You are infuriatingly pragmatic, Mr. Cole, Alexander murmured. I am just tired, Mr. Vance, I corrected him. 9 tomorrow morning. Nightfall Tower, top floor, he commanded, turning toward the elevator. Do not be late. I make no promises, I called out to his retreating back. The next morning, I stood in the gleaming hyper-modern lobby of Nightfall Capital. I was wearing an oversized cashmere sweater, loose maternity trousers, and a pair of ridiculously comfortable loafers. Around me, sharp-suited executives rushed past like caffeinated sharks, throwing confused glances at the pregnant man yawning in the center of their pristine floor. I rubbed my belly, offering a silent prayer to whatever gods governed this novel. Let us go teach the villain how to peel shrimp, kid. Nightfall Capital top floor was a temple dedicated to ruthless, unadulterated capitalism. It was a fortress of cold glass, black steel, and hyper-caffeinated executives who would gladly sell their own grandmothers for a 2% market bump. And right in the dead center of this terrifying ecosystem, inside the cavernous office of the apex predator himself, there was me. I was lying completely horizontal on a custom Italian leather sofa, swathed in a ridiculously soft cashmere throw, trying to toss a piece of gourmet popcorn into my mouth. I missed. It bounced off my 8-month pregnant belly and rolled onto the floor. I sighed, too lazy to reach for it. Ryan, I called out without opening my eyes. I dropped a casualty. Within 3 seconds, Ryan Hayes materialized. In the corporate world, Ryan was known as Alexander Vance, primary executioner, a brilliant, ruthless fixer who orchestrated hostile takeovers before his morning espresso. Currently, however, the terrifying Mr. Hayes was holding a silver tray bearing a glass of warm milk and a laminated spreadsheet. "I will have maintenance handle the popcorn, Mr. Cole," Ryan said, his face completely deadpan. He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. "It is currently 11 in the morning. Time for your prenatal calcium supplement. Also, per the boss' request, I have compiled a comparative analysis of the top-tier organic diaper brands imported from Switzerland versus Japan. I cross-referenced absorbency rates with hypoallergenic material certifications." I cracked one eye open, staring at the deadly corporate assassin holding a diaper chart. "You put that in an Excel spreadsheet." With pivot tables, Ryan confirmed without missing a beat. The Japanese imports yield a higher return on investment regarding rash prevention. "Approved. Buy a warehouse full of them," I mumbled, accepting the warm milk. From the massive mahogany desk across the room, a low, dark chuckle vibrated through the air. Alexander Vance was watching me over the top of his platinum-rimmed reading glasses. He was dressed in a charcoal suit, looking every inch the ruthless billionaire villain. Yet he had spent the last hour silently observing a lazy pregnant man command his top executive like a butler. "You are corrupting my staff," Asher Alexander rumbled, setting down his Mont Blanc pen. "I am diversifying their skill sets," I countered, taking a sip of the milk. It was exactly the right temperature. Speaking of diversification, how is the assassination of my ex-husband empire going? Alexander tapped a file on his desk. "Julian is bleeding money, but Apex Holdings still has a stronghold on the downtown commercial real estate sector. Their supply chain for raw steel is surprisingly tight." I yawned, stretching my legs. It is not tight. It is a mirage. Julian uses a shell company in the Caymans registered under his precious Caleb maiden name to bypass import tariffs. Audit the manifests from the Brooklyn port for the last 3 quarters. You will find a 10% discrepancy in weight. It is blatant tax fraud. Alexander froze. The air in the office suddenly felt heavy. He looked at the file, then back at me, his storm gray eyes flashing with a dangerous, hungry light. It was the look of a predator watching its mate casually slaughter a deer. "You," Alexander said softly, "are a terrifying creature." "I am a tired creature," I corrected, closing my eyes again and pulling the cashmere blanket up to my chin. "Now, shoo. I need my pre-lunch nap." The office fell silent. I drifted into a light, comfortable doze, lulled by the distant hum of the city traffic and the faint, rhythmic scratching of Alexander pen. I do not know exactly how much time passed, but I woke up to a subtle shift in the air. The heavy scent of cedarwood and petrichor Alexander alpha pheromones was overwhelmingly close. I kept my eyes closed, feeling the gentle drape of a heavy suit jacket being laid over my blanket to keep me warm. Then I felt it. A large, warm hand hovered over my stomach before gently tentatively resting on the swell. My breath hitched. Beneath my skin, Elias the baby responded instantly, delivering a solid, joyful kick right against Alexander's palm. I heard Alexander draw in a sharp, ragged breath. I opened my eyes slowly. He was kneeling beside the sofa, his usual cold, intimidating mask completely shattered. His eyes were dark, filled with a raw, desperate awe as he stared at my belly. He looked like a man who had conquered the world, but was entirely undone by a single tiny heartbeat. Our eyes met. The distance between us was virtually non-existent. "He is strong," Alexander whispered, his voice thick with an emotion I could not quite name. His thumb stroked a slow, soothing circle through the fabric of my sweater. "He is a menace." I breathed back, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm that had nothing to do with pregnancy. The air between us cracked with a heavy magnetic tension. I should have pulled away. I was a salted fish. I was supposed to avoid complicated villains, but looking into those storm gray eyes, I found myself leaning a fraction of an inch closer. Suddenly, a sharp, searing twinge ripped through my lower abdomen. I gasped in pain, my hands flying to my stomach. The romantic tension shattered into a million pieces. Alexander's face went completely pale. The ruthless demon of Wall Street vanished, replaced by an absolute panicking wreck. Asher Alexander barked, his hands hovering over me, terrified to touch, terrified not to. "Ryan, get in here. Call the medical team. Ready the helicopter." "Wait," I winced, taking a deep breath. The heavy oak doors flew open. Ryan rushed in, phone already at his ear, looking ready to murder whoever caused the problem. "Medevac is on standby, sir." "I do not need a medevac," I yelled, waving them both off. The pain slowly subsided, replaced by an intense hollow ache in my stomach. I glared at the two most terrifying men in New York who were currently staring at me like I was a bomb about to detonate. It was just a cramp. And I am starving. My blood sugar dropped because someone was busy staring at me instead of ordering lunch. Alexander stood frozen, his chest heaving as he stared at me. "A cramp. Are you certain?" "I want a strawberry crepe," I demanded, leaning back against the pillows, acting way braver than I felt, "with extra whipped cream and chocolate." Alexander closed his eyes, exhaling a breath that sounded suspiciously like a prayer. When he opened them again, the panic was gone, replaced by an ironclad, terrifying resolve. He turned to his assistant. "Get the crepes," Alexander ordered. Then he turned his deadly gaze back to me. "And as of this moment, you are banned from touching a single financial file. You will do nothing but rest, eat, and breathe. If I catch you looking at a spreadsheet, I will burn the Bloomberg terminal." I could not help it. I burst out laughing. The big bad villain was officially on diaper duty. It started on a Tuesday, the kind of crisp, clear New York morning where absolutely nothing was supposed to go wrong. But I had forgotten one crucial, terrifying rule of existing in a fictional world: the main character halo. Julian and Caleb were backed into a corner, bleeding money and losing influence. According to the twisted logic of this universe, that meant reality itself was about to bend over backwards to save them. I was in the middle of my mandatory nap at 1 p.m. on the leather sofa when Ryan burst into the office. His usually immaculate tie was actually skewed a fraction of an inch to the left, a sign of absolute corporate panic. Mr. Cole Ryan said, his voice clipped. "3 of our primary syndicate partners just pulled out of the Apex hostile takeover, simultaneously." I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes and resting a protective hand on my heavy belly. Why, the margins we offered were practically guaranteed. Did Julian counteroffer? No, Ryan replied, looking visibly disgusted by what he was about to say. They cited unexplainable bad feelings and a sudden crisis of conscience. It defies all financial logic. I thought a cold dread pooling in my stomach. The plot armor. The universe was actively forcing ruthless Wall Street investors to grow a conscience just to save Julian's pathetic empire. Alexander's voice crackled over the intercom on Ryan's desk, sharp and cold as a glacier. "Ryan, get Asher to the penthouse immediately. Use the armored detail. I will deal with these defecting partners myself." I didn't argue. As much as I wanted to be a lazy salted fish, I wasn't stupid. If the plot was trying to fix itself, I, the designated cannon fodder, was in extreme danger. 10 minutes later, I was strapped into the backseat of a heavily armored Nightfall SUV, escorted by 2 security vehicles. We were crossing the intersection at 5th Avenue when the real attack happened. It was a heavy, unmarked delivery truck. It didn't just run the red light. It accelerated, barreling straight toward the passenger side of my vehicle. It was the most classic cliché novel trope in the book, the desperate tragic accident designed to make the pregnant villain lover miscarry. But Alexander didn't hire regular drivers. Our driver, a scarred ex-military operative, yanked the steering wheel with brutal precision. The SUV swerved violently, taking the catastrophic impact on the reinforced engine block instead of my door. Metal shrieked. The SUV spun out of control, slamming into a concrete barrier before grinding to a halt. Airbags deployed with a deafening popping sound, filling the cabin with white powder and the smell of burnt rubber. I curled into a tight ball, wrapping both arms fiercely around my stomach. "Elias, hold on." I gasped, tears of raw panic pricking my eyes. The baby kicked back hard, distressed but alive. We were trapped. The doors were jammed, the engine was smoking, and sirens were wailing in the distance. I squeezed my eyes shut, my heart hammering a frantic, terrifying rhythm against my ribs. Is this it? Does the plot always win? Then the sky tore open. A deafening, rhythmic roar drowned out the city traffic. I forced my eyes open and peered through the cracked, bulletproof glass. A sleek, matte black helicopter bearing the Nightfall Capital insignia was descending directly into the middle of the blocked Manhattan intersection, blowing debris and screaming pedestrians in every direction. The side door slid open before the skids even touched the asphalt. Alexander Vance stepped out. He didn't look like a CEO. With his suit jacket discarded and his dress shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows, his storm gray eyes burning with absolute murderous fury, he looked like a literal god of war. He strode through the wreckage, grabbed the jammed door of my SUV, and with the help of his security team, ripped it open. Asher. His voice was a ragged breath. He unbuckled me, his large hands frantically checking me over before he pulled me into his arms, lifting my heavy, pregnant frame effortlessly against his chest. I am okay. I choked out, burying my face in his neck, inhaling his grounding scent of cedarwood. The baby is fine. I am fine. Hospital Ryan shouted over the helicopter blades. Alexander jaw locked. He looked at the smoking delivery truck, then down at me. No, have the medical team meet us. First, we are making a stop. 10 minutes later, the Nightfall convoy did not pull up to Mount Sinai Hospital. We screeched to a halt in front of the towering glass headquarters of Apex Holdings. I sat in the back of the newly arrived Maybach, perfectly safe, watching through the tinted window as Alexander walked straight through the revolving doors of his enemy fortress, flanked by a dozen massive security contractors. Inside the grand lobby, Julian and Caleb were popping a bottle of champagne, celebrating their miraculous luck with the withdrawing partners. Their smiles vanished the second Alexander shattered their reality. Alexander didn't speak. He didn't issue a corporate threat. He walked straight up to Julian, grabbed him by the throat of his tailored suit, and slammed him against the marble security desk so hard the stone cracked. Caleb screamed. Security guards rushed forward, but Alexander men drew their weapons, freezing the entire lobby in absolute terror. You touched my world, Alexander snarled, his voice echoing off the high ceilings, vibrating with a dark, lethal promise. I am going to shred yours. You cannot, Julian gasped, clawing at Alexander's hand. Your partners left. We won. It is over. Alexander let out a cold, terrifying laugh that made my blood run cold even from the safety of the car. You think you are lucky, Julian, Alexander whispered, dropping him to the floor like a piece of garbage. You think those partners walked away? I bought them. 30 minutes ago. I bought their debt. I bought their assets. And now I own the very ground you are bleeding on. Your company is dead. And if you ever look in Asher direction again, I will make sure you are too. Alexander turned his back on them and walked out, leaving the main characters weeping in the ruins of their shattered plot armor. When Alexander climbed back into the Maybach, the adrenaline finally crashed. The terrifying apex predator vanished. He pulled me into his lap, wrapping his large coat around me, burying his face in my hair. He was shaking. The most powerful man in New York was trembling because he almost lost me. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the frantic beating of his heart. I wasn't a salted fish anymore. I was hopelessly, terrifyingly in love with the villain. I have got you, I whispered, intertwining my fingers with his. We are safe. Act 5. The salted fish protects the demon. The aftermath of the car crash changed everything. Back in the secure, suffocating luxury of the Nightfall penthouse, the adrenaline finally evaporated, leaving behind a terrifying, undeniable truth. I had fallen in love with the villain. Me, the ultimate salted fish. The guy who just wanted to take his divorce money, eat premium caviar, and sleep for 14 hours a day. I had somehow managed to anchor my entire existence to Alexander Vance, a man whose reputation was built on ruthless destruction. But loving the villain in a novel came with a massive glaring death flag. Historically, men like Alexander didn't get happy endings. They got redemption through sacrifice, or they went down in a blaze of glorious, tragic darkness. And over the next few days, I watched with growing panic as Alexander began to systematically prepare for the latter. He grew distant. Not physically. He still insisted on sleeping with one arm protectively wrapped around my heavy belly. But emotionally, he was slipping into the shadows. He started leaving the penthouse before dawn and returning long after midnight, smelling of cold wind, stale black coffee, and something metallic and dangerous. He wouldn't look me in the eye. Whenever I reached for his hand, he would gently pull away, looking at his own fingers as if they were permanently stained with blood. He was a man haunted by his own darkness, utterly convinced that his ruthless nature made him unworthy of touching something as pure as his unborn son. The breaking point happened on a rainy Thursday evening. I was lounging on the velvet sofa trying to ignore the sinking feeling in my chest when Ryan walked into the living room. The terrifying corporate assassin was holding a newly delivered state-of-the-art baby bottle sterilizer. He set it on the kitchen island, staring at it with an expression of profound, uncharacteristic defeat. "Ryan," I called out, my voice cutting through the quiet hum of the penthouse. "Where is he?" Ryan stiffened, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "Mr. Vance is finalizing the Apex Holdings situation, Mr. Cole. He requested that you eat the sea bass the chef prepared and retire early." I pushed myself up into a sitting position, my eyes narrowing. "Do not give me the corporate PR script, Ryan. Julian Empire is already ash. There are no more board meetings." What is Alexander actually doing? Ryan remained silent, his jaw clenched tight. But I was 8.5 months pregnant, fiercely hormonal, and absolutely done playing the oblivious bystander. "Ryan Hayes," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "if you do not tell me exactly where my child father is right now, I will personally ensure that your next assignment is auditing diaper factories in Antarctica." Ryan closed his eyes, a heavy sigh escaping his lips. The loyalty of the assistant finally cracked under the terrifying weight of a pregnant partner glare. "He is at the Brooklyn Navy Yard," Ryan confessed, his voice strained. "Julian attempted to flee the country with embezzled funds." Mr. Vance intercepted him. "Asher, he is liquidating his offshore dark assets. He has drafted a succession plan for Nightfall Capital, transferring all primary holdings to a blind trust in your name." My blood ran completely cold. "He is stepping down." "He is severing ties," Ryan corrected, looking at me with grim urgency. "He believes that the only way to permanently protect you and the child from Julian and from his own underworld enemies is to cross a line tonight. And once he crosses it, he intends to disappear to keep your hands clean." That absolute dramatic self-sacrificing idiot. The sheer audacity of it burned through my lethargy like wildfire. He dragged me out of my peaceful retirement, forced me to eat organic vegetables, made me fall in love with him, and now he wanted to play the tragic anti-hero. "Not on my watch." "Get the car," I snapped, tossing the cashmere blanket aside and grabbing my coat. "Now." 20 minutes later, the Nightfall armored SUV tore through the pouring rain, screeching to a halt outside an abandoned warehouse at the Brooklyn docks. The area was swarming with Alexander black-clad security contractors. I didn't wait for Ryan to open my door. I shoved it open and marched into the damp, dimly lit warehouse, my loafers splashing aggressively through the puddles. The scene inside was straight out of a mob movie. Julian was on his knees in the center of the concrete floor, bruised, soaked, and sobbing pathetically. Standing over him was Alexander. The demon of Wall Street looked like the Grim Reaper himself, a suppressed firearm gripped loosely in his right hand. His storm gray eyes were dead, completely devoid of light as he raised the weapon. "Alexander Vance!" I screamed, my voice echoing off the high tin ceiling. Alexander froze. His head snapped toward me, his eyes widening in absolute unadulterated horror. "Asher, what are you doing here? Get him out of here!" He roared at Ryan, dropping the gun to his side as if it had suddenly caught fire. I didn't stop. I waddled past the terrified security guards, past the pathetic, sniveling mess that was Julian Pierce, and marched straight up to the most dangerous man in New York. "Asher, stop. Do not look at this." "I am dirty, do not." Alexander pleaded, taking a step back, holding his hands up as if terrified of tainting me. "Shut up," I snapped. And then, throwing away every ounce of cowardice and salted fish laziness I possessed, I closed the distance and threw my arms around his neck, burying my face into his damp, cold chest. Alexander went rigid. A breathless, broken sound tore from his throat. Slowly, agonizingly, his arms came up to wrap around my waist, pulling me against him, as if I were his only anchor in a storm. "You absolute idiot!" I cried, hitting his shoulder weakly. "You ruined my retirement plan. You got me pregnant. You made me care about your stupid spreadsheets. And now you are going to commit a felony and run away. You think leaving me alone makes you a hero? I am a monster," Asher Alexander whispered into my hair, his voice cracking, tears mixing with the rain on his face. "I destroy everything I touch. If I stay, I will pull you and Elias into the dark. He deserves better than a father with blood on his hands." I pulled back just enough to look fiercely into his storm gray eyes. "I do not need a saint, and I certainly do not need a murderer. Our child needs a father to take him to Central Park. He needs a father who knows how to peel my shrimp and heat my milk. You want to protect us? Then live in the light with us, you coward." Silence fell over the warehouse, save for the rhythmic drumming of the rain against the roof. Alexander stared at me, his chest heaving. The heavy, suffocating darkness that had surrounded him for years seemed to shatter under the weight of my demand. He looked at the gun in his hand, then at Julian, and finally back at me, and the heavy curve of my belly pressed against him. With a definitive metallic clatter, Alexander dropped the gun onto the concrete floor. He cupped my face in both his large, trembling hands, leaning down to press his forehead against mine. "Okay." He breathed a raw, desperate surrender. "Okay. I will stay. I am yours. I am yours." I let out a shaky breath, closing my eyes and leaning into his warmth. The villain had finally surrendered his halo of darkness, and I, the lazy cannon fodder, had just successfully protected the final boss. I have always been a firm believer that anyone who voluntarily stands behind a podium before 10 in the morning lacks basic self-respect. Yet here I was at 9 in the morning on a crisp Monday morning, standing in the grand auditorium of the New York State Department of Transportation. I was 8.5 months pregnant, wearing a custom-tailored Navy suit that miraculously accommodated my belly, and I was about to deliver the final fatal blow to my ex-husband empire. The bidding war for the state metro expansion was the largest infrastructure contract of the decade. For Julian Pierce and Apex Holdings, it was a desperate Hail Mary pass to save their sinking ship. For Nightfall Capital and Horizon, it was the final nail in the coffin. Alexander was sitting in the front row. He wasn't on stage. He had absolutely refused to co-present. "This is your stage, Asher," he had whispered to me in the car. "You are the architect of their downfall. I am just your audience." I adjusted the microphone, looking out at the sea of state officials, urban planners, and rival executives. Across the aisle, Julian was sweating through his suit, his face a sickly shade of gray. Caleb was sitting behind him, chewing nervously on his thumbnail. The so-called main characters looked absolutely pathetic. Apex Holdings has promised you a completed transit line in 36 months. I began, my voice ringing clear and steady through the massive hall. I didn't bother with a warm-up. Salted fish do not do corporate icebreakers. I tapped the remote in my hand, bringing up a massive, intricate schematic on the screen behind me. What Mr. Pierce failed to include in his aggressive timeline are the glaring vulnerabilities in his raw steel supply chain. I continued, my eyes locking dead onto Julian, specifically a supply chain heavily reliant on a shell corporation based in the Cayman Islands, which is currently under active investigation by the SEC for severe import tariff evasion and gross weight discrepancies. A collective gasp echoed through the auditorium. The state officials sat up their pens, freezing over their legal pads. Julian shot out of his chair, his face contorted in panic. "Objection. This is a baseless smear campaign. He is a disgruntled ex-husband fabricating. I have submitted a 600-page addendum to the committee detailing the exact manifest discrepancies cross-referenced with Port Authority logs." I interrupted, my tone as bored as if I were reading a grocery list. Apex margins are a mirage built on fraudulent logistics. If the state of New York partners with them, you are not just funding a metro line. You are funding a federal crime. I didn't stop there. For the next 20 minutes, I systematically, ruthlessly dissected every single flaw, lie, and shortcut in Apex proposal. I didn't need plot armor. I had logic, impeccable research, and the pure, unadulterated motivation of wanting to go home and take a nap. When I finally stepped down from the podium, the silence in the room was absolute. Then the chief of the committee leaned into his microphone. Mr. Pierce, the chief, said gravely, "In light of these allegations, your bid is indefinitely suspended, pending a federal audit." It was over. Julian collapsed into his chair, burying his face in his hands. Caleb let out a loud theatrical sob, looking around the room for sympathy that simply wasn't there. I didn't stay to watch the rest of the circus. My lower back was killing me, and my feet felt like they were stuffed with lead. I walked out the side doors of the auditorium, flanked by Alexander's security detail, and headed straight for the VIP lounge. As the heavy, soundproof doors closed behind me, shutting out the chaos of the press and the ruined executives, I let out a massive, exhausting sigh. I kicked off my expensive loafers, sinking deep into a plush leather armchair. "I demand a pay raise," I grumbled to the empty room, "or at least a lifetime supply of truffles." "You can have the company of the truffles and anything else you desire," a low velvet voice answered. Alexander stepped out from the shadows of the lounge. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, his storm gray eyes burning with an intensity that took my breath away. He didn't look like the demon of Wall Street right now. He looked like a man standing before his deity. He dropped to one knee right in front of my chair. "Alexander, what are you doing? Your suit." I started, but the words died in my throat as he took both of my hands in his. "Julian and Caleb will not be returning to their penthouse today," Alexander said softly, his thumbs tracing the back of my knuckles. "The FBI was waiting for them in the lobby. The embezzlement, the tax fraud, the Cayman accounts. I expedited the evidence to the district attorney last night. Apex Holdings will file for bankruptcy by noon. I cleaned the board for you, Asher. There is nothing left to threaten you." I stared at him, my heart hammering against my ribs. You did all of that behind the scenes." Alexander nodded. Then he reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a thick legal document, setting it gently on my lap. "This is a blind trust. I established it yesterday. It contains $2 billion in diversified assets, completely, in the name of Elias Vance, untouchable by anyone, including me." I couldn't speak. My eyes burned with sudden tears. The sheer magnitude of what he was offering, absolute security, absolute devotion, absolute surrender. Alexander looked up at me, his handsome face open, vulnerable, and fiercely determined. "You dragged me out of the dark, Asher," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "You protected me when I didn't deserve it. You took a monster and gave him a family. I do not want to be the villain of the story anymore. I just want to be yours." He shifted closer, his large hands moving to gently cradle my swollen belly. "Let me be your butler," Alexander murmured, his eyes locking onto mine. "Let me be your bodyguard. Let me peel your shrimp, heat your milk, and guard your sleep. Asher Cole, let me be your husband for the rest of my life." A tear slipped down my cheek, but a massive, radiant smile broke across my face. I looked at the terrifying apex predator kneeling at my feet, offering me the world on a silver platter. "You forgot one thing," I whispered, leaning down. Alexander blinked. "What?" "You also have to change the diapers." Before he could respond, I grabbed the lapels of his suit and pulled him up into a deep, desperate kiss. It tasted like victory, like rain, like cedar wood, and forever. Alexander groaned, his arms wrapping tightly around me, holding me as if he would never let go. Between us, Elias delivered a strong, rhythmic kick, as if cheering for the final perfect plot twist. The cannon fodder had officially stolen the halo, the empire, and the villain heart. And honestly, it was exhausting. I couldn't wait to go home and sleep. Elias Vance entered the world on a rainy Tuesday morning at Mount Sinai Hospital, bringing with him the sheer deafening volume of a Wall Street trading floor and the demanding, undeniable presence of his father. When the medical team finally placed that tiny, squirming, red-faced bundle onto my chest, the entire world simply stopped spinning. The exhaustion of labor melted into the sterile hospital sheets, replaced by a fierce, terrifying wave of love. I looked down at the mop of dark hair and those tiny, perfectly formed fists, and I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that every chaotic, terrifying moment of the past 9 months had been absolutely worth it. Beside my bed, Alexander Vance, the demon of the financial district, the apex predator who had brought an entire corporate empire to its knees without breaking a sweat, was completely and utterly undone. He was on his knees, his forehead pressed against the edge of the mattress, crying silently. His large, trembling hands reached out terrified to touch, until I gently grabbed his wrist and guided his palm to rest over our son's tiny back. "Meet your boss, Mr. Vance." I whispered, my voice, hoarse tears blurring my vision. Alexander let out a wet, broken laugh. He leaned in, kissing my sweat-dampened forehead with a reverence that felt like a religion, before pressing the gentlest, most delicate kiss to Elias' head. "My world," Alexander murmured, his storm gray eyes shining with absolute devotion. "Both of you, my entire world." And just like that, the ruthless villain arc was officially closed. The dark, brooding antagonist of the novel had been completely neutralized by a 7-pound baby and a very tired, very stubborn salted fish. 2 years later, the morning sun was pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our Manhattan penthouse, casting a warm golden glow over the spectacular view of Central Park. The air smelled of freshly brewed artisanal espresso warm pastries and the faint, unmistakable scent of expensive baby powder. I was draped horizontally across the custom velvet sofa, swathed in my favorite oversized cashmere sweater, scrolling lazily through a tablet. I was currently debating between buying a private island in the Maldives or just ordering a really expensive truffle pizza for lunch. Being an immensely wealthy retired cannon fodder was truly exhausting work. On the massive flat-screen television across the room, the morning financial news was playing on low volume. The anchor voice was crisp and professional. In a stunning conclusion to a 2-year legal saga, former Apex Holdings CEO Julian Pierce has been sentenced to federal prison following a massive fraud and embezzlement conviction. Once hailed as the golden boy of downtown real estate, Pierce filed for personal bankruptcy last month after his remaining assets were seized to pay off defrauded investors. Footage flashed on the screen of Julian walking out of a courthouse. He looked a decade older, his designer suit hanging loosely on a gaunt frame, his face pale and defeated. He was completely alone. Caleb had abandoned ship the moment the credit cards started declining, last seen boarding a flight to Europe with a minor tech investor. The so-called main characters had met their destined pathetic end completely crushed beneath the wheels of their own greed and the terrifying competence of my husband. I took a slow, satisfying sip of my freshly squeezed orange juice. "Asher, I have a crisis." The deep, rumbling voice broke my concentration. I casually looked up from my tablet to witness the most glorious comedic spectacle of my entire life. Alexander Vance was standing in the center of the living room. He was dressed in a pristine charcoal gray Armani suit, looking every inch the terrifying billionaire CEO who was supposed to be leading a global summit in exactly 45 minutes. However, perched firmly on his hip was 2-year-old Elias. Our son had inherited my absolute refusal to cooperate with schedules and Alexander's storm gray eyes. Elias was currently holding a half-empty bottle of organic milk and grinning a wicked, toothy smile. And dripping down the lapel of Alexander's $10,000 suit jacket was a massive, milky puddle of toddler spit-up. Alexander stood frozen, his arms held awkwardly away from his body, staring down at the stain with a look of sheer, unadulterated horror. The man who regularly decimated rival corporations over morning coffee was completely paralyzed by a dairy product. He ambushed me. Alexander said, his voice entirely devoid of its usual lethal authority. I was explaining the concept of compound interest to him, and he just rebelled. I burst into a fit of breathless laughter, tossing my tablet onto the cushions. I didn't even bother sitting up. "That is what you get for talking about Wall Street before he has had his nap. Alex," I snorted, wiping a tear of mirth from my eye. "He is an artist. He does not care about your diversified portfolio." Alexander sighed a heavy, resigned sound. He looked at the ruined suit, then at the giggling toddler in his arms, and finally at me lounging lazily on the sofa like an emperor holding court. "You are enjoying this entirely too much," Alexander muttered, though the corners of his mouth were twitching upward. "I am living my best life," I corrected him cheerfully. "Now take off the jacket before it ruins the shirt. And while you are standing there, be a dear, and fetch me some more orange juice. Your son drained my energy." Alexander shook his head, a fond, utterly helpless smile breaking across his handsome face. He set Elias down gently onto the plush rug, letting the toddler waddle off to demolish a tower of wooden blocks. Then he stripped off the ruined Armani jacket, tossing it carelessly over a chair. He didn't go to the kitchen for the juice right away. Instead, he walked over to the sofa, leaning down over me. He braced his large hands on either side of my shoulders, trapping me in the warm, heavy scent of cedarwood and alpha pheromones. "You are a menace, Asher Cole," he murmured, his eyes dark and warm, with an affection that still made my heart skip a beat, even after all this time. "I am a retired menace," I whispered back, reaching up to loop my arms loosely around his neck. "And you are the fool who signed up for a lifetime subscription." Alexander lowered his head, capturing my lips in a slow, deep, devastating kiss that tasted like coffee and absolute devotion. It was the kind of kiss that made the rest of the world blur into insignificance. When we finally pulled apart, both of us smiling, I realized the ultimate truth of my bizarre, novel, transmigrating existence. The greatest revenge wasn't destroying your enemies. It wasn't driving them to bankruptcy or watching them cry on national television. The greatest, most absolute revenge was surviving the plot, claiming the villain, and living a ridiculously happy, obscenely lazy life, loved beyond all measure. Juice, Mr. Vance, I reminded him, tapping his nose. And then go change a diaper. I think the CEO of Nightfall Capital just soiled himself. Alexander laughed, a bright booming sound that filled the penthouse with light, and turned to chase after our son. My retirement plan, it turned out, was absolutely perfect.